Hey everyone! So, like how I shared in my introductory video, that I'm interested in topics like spirituality, depth psychology, and manifestation. Um, I thought before I kind of like just jumped straight into sharing all of my learnings and all of the enlightenment I've gotten through my lived experience, I thought that I would actually share my story about how I was being introduced to the law of attraction and how every other experiences kind of like just unfold itself, and through all of these experiences, like what I learned along the way, and how did the topic just kind of like unfolds and get bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's no longer just on my desire on want to manifest stuff or manifest things in this 3D reality, but also how it kind of like just unfolds and get deeper into human psyche and stuff like that. So of course, I have more stories than this, but this is kind of like just a part of my story where it all kind of like all kickstarts and how I rabbit hole into it. So basically, I am not the same person that I was. If you would have known me back then, you wouldn't want to be my friend. Like, I was so negative. I basically hated almost every aspects of my life, and every aspects of my life, I can find things to complain about. I hold no gratitude. Like, I don't feel grateful for anything. I tried, I would say that I tried multiple ways to change things, but it always kind of feel like it falls back to the same pattern. So during the lowest point of my life, an ex-colleague of mine introduced me to the book The Secret. Um, of course, I feel like the book The Secret needs almost no introduction. Like, I feel like it got so popular at one point that it felt like it also kickstarted a journey for like a lot of us. But just to share a little bit of what it says, is basically saying like um, your thoughts manifest your reality. Your focus is gonna like attract your reality. Basically, law of attraction, and that's how it works. So for me, it was kind of like a light bulb moment. Like, it's a no wonder why um my reality is the one I dislike, because I basically have the knack of focusing on the negative and just find ways to hate life or hate anything, so to say. About the book, right, it says to focus on the positive. I mean, to be honest, if I were to like dive back to what I was thinking, it was kind of like, it wasn't even like kind of give it a try, but it was more of like a, haha, I have a realization of what went wrong now, what went wrong. So now, what I need to do is basically to change my thoughts. And I was basically a lot more solution orientated at that time. So I was like, okay, I'll just change my thoughts. It's not so hard, right? So I basically really try my very best to ignore my feelings and all of the inner compass telling me that something is wrong, this is not to your liking, da da da, because I have so much faith in believing that as long as I try hard enough to focus on the positive, I'm gonna change my reality. I mean, that was how I was back then. Like, this is the solution, I just need to try hard enough. So, to share a little bit more about my own story, is that at a point of time, so basically, I went for a party reading, and the guy told me that I basically won't thrive in Singapore. Singapore is not the place for me, and gave me a list of countries to say that I can migrate to. And I chose one. I chose that particular country, and then following, all of the steps that was mentioned in the book The Secret to a T, I, mm, you know, made all of the plannings, all of the steps, take all of the steps to really arrange for that move, to really find a job overseas, while all at the same time ignoring my inner compass, ignoring parts of myself inside of me that was like screaming at the top of their lungs, telling me not to do it. It was kind of like a no, it's not even like a logical sense of like, you know what, you need to weigh your consequences, you need to weigh your options, things like that. It's not even that. It is screaming for me to stop. But me being wanting to be very disciplined and having all of the faith to believe that the steps mentioned in the law of attraction in the secret works, I ignore all of the feelings and made all of the steps, quit my job, and went over there. And that was when I broke down and cried because I just couldn't hold it in any longer. Like the part of me is like I couldn't do this anymore, and the part of me like wanting to hold on to faith also cannot do this anymore. I After all of the months of planning and doing all of the stuff, I basically landed in that country, and instead of like being serious about planning for me to move there, I basically had like a little holiday before flying back to Singapore, and then we start all over again. So I think at that point of time, I didn't even have the energy to really think into why the steps that was taught in The Secret didn't work for me. I was basically like really, really exhausted from pushing myself so hard and then believing that it will work, and then it didn't. Maybe it did, maybe it will do if I continue to push myself harder, but it just simply didn't feel aligned to me for me. So in the end, I came back to Singapore. I rested for a little bit and then start looking for a job. And then once I, settled into my new job back then, I feel then that was when I have kind of like the space and the time to really think and really feel. And at that point of time, I was like, maybe this is fate. Maybe I'm not meant to enjoy my life. Maybe I'm not meant to have a happy life. Maybe I just have to resign to fate. If it's I'm meant to be in a job that I'm not happy, be in a country or surrounded by people that I'm not happy with, maybe I should just resign to it. That was my thought back then. So I kind of like carried on with life, and I kind of like suck it up, so to say, for a little while. And it was strange, but at that point of time, I even gave up complaining, so to say, because I felt so resigned to my fate at that time. But slowly, as things starts to get a little bit better, I feel like I'm more settled back into my life. I, of course, start to research, start to Google, start to find stuff on YouTube again, on stuff like, on topics like spirituality, so to say. And at that point of time, the trending topic was like, you shouldn't just focus on law of attraction, you should be focusing on raising your vibration. And I think it was paired up together with the fact that I feel pretty traumatized with the whole experience I went through. Um, I want to say like, the experience, the external experience itself was traumatizing, but it was traumatizing for me to kind of like ignore the part of me that is screaming at me for attention and just carrying on like it didn't exist. I think that itself was the traumatizing part. But anyway, at that point of time, I kind of like gave up setting intention, gave up trying to manifest stuff, But when I came across this topic on like raising your vibration, I'm like, hey, you know what? I can, if let's say raising my vibration is going to help me manifest better things in my life without, setting intention of like what are the certain things I want to, it doesn't sound too hard. So yeah, I focus on raising my vibration for a bit at that time. However, I thought the funny thing about me trying to like record the journey and mentioning at one point I my focus was raising my vibration. I actually couldn't really remember what are the steps or like the things I've done to raise my vibration. But at the top of my head, I feel like it was something like, be more grateful, keep a gratitude journal, and look at things at a different angle. Try basically in comparing to the steps given in the book The Secret, it felt more of like a, you know, um, positive focus, but without setting an intention, I would say. Yeah, it felt like that. So I was doing that for like a little bit, and then of course at the same time have like guilty of having line one in my human design. My my passion, my tendency is basically going down rabbit hole on a lot of things. So anyway, I while I was practicing all of that, I continued to rabbit hole down um, the path of spirituality on, or like, how to raise my vibration. That's when I come across this big name, Teal Swan. Um, I feel like I have been watching her content on and off for a bit, like before that point when I kind of like rediscover her. Uh, but it wasn't, I feel like the content was kind of like not enough for me, so I didn't religiously follow her. But I feel like the content that I came across at that point that caught my attention was like something like, this is why focusing on law of attraction doesn't work, or like fuck law of attraction. I couldn't really remember, but that was something that caught my attention and I watched it. And of course, that aside, right, I think the major thing that really part of the content that really helped me a lot was diving into like understanding the concept of conscious versus unconscious, and how we all have different parts of us inside inside of us, even though it appears it's just like, one person, but there are like really like a lot of parts in us. And all of these parts actually have an impact on the law of attraction, so to say, which is why what's being thought in The Secret wasn't enough. Just basically having positive focus is not gonna get you the end result. And it was kind of like the moment where everything clicked for me. Like, this is why like I couldn't bear to like move on with the plans, even though like I tried my best to ignore that voice, ignore parts of me that didn't want to move, and things like that. So I really deep dive into understanding that there are different parts of facets of us, and understanding how to do parts work, understanding how the shadow work works. And from then on, it was like a I don't know, like a, how should I describe this? I realized a realm of knowledge that I never before known, and it really changed up the way I look at my life, the way I look at people ever since. And also, how does the law of attraction impacts all of us? Like it is actually, I would say like law of attraction or law of mirroring is actually neutral. It doesn't discriminate, there's no biasness, but it's more of like do you understand it well enough to understand how does it impact you? Because if there are parts of us that lies in our unconscious, right, it's not because it's biased against you, but it's just some facets of you that you have not known yet. So the other part that really helped me was learning emotional regulation. So like how in the book The Secret, or like, like people talking about raising vibration, they were basically saying to really focus on the good feelings, really focus on the positive feelings, and that is gonna, determine your vibration or to kind of like attract your reality. But the thing is, it is not. Emotional regulation is basically allowing their emotions to come up, allowing their emotions to express itself in however ways that it wants, and that itself helps you to process and integrate the emotion. And it was kind of like an epiphany moment for me, because it was like the opposite of what the law of attraction, the book The Secret was teaching, or like how of the teachings of like, positive focus is like. So that was like a mind blown moment, and the realization that I have been going the opposite direction, and which is a no wonder all of that awful experience happened to me, so to say. Yeah. And that was also when I really take the chance to sit with myself, be with myself. I realized how much pent up emotions I had. So I remember there was a point of my life where after realizing this, I sat down and kind of like meditated for a while, like for a little bit every night before I sleep, and just allowing whatever comes up to come up. And I remember meditations where I just feel nothing but pure terror, and it was so bad that like when my husband walked past me or like make any sound, I would just jump up literally. And yeah, it was definitely a really uncomfortable experience. I probably go more in depth into that in other videos, but it's kind of like that. So it was a very, very painful experience, so to say. Um, but really sticking to it and really just be disciplined about it night after night. And suddenly, one night, I just realized that, hey, I don't feel as painful as before. I don't feel as bad as before. And it was pretty nuts. So it's not even about like just knowing things, like learning things of online and then thinking that it's like that. I put all of them to practical use. Like I actually use them, practice them, and then I'm kind of like the guinea pig of all of the teachings I learned online. And that was when I realized that positive focus doesn't work for me, at least not during that stage. Um, and emotional processing regulation does work for me. And at one point I was just diving into every of Tilswan's video, talking about different emotions, about like anger, about like grief, about like guilt, and that really really helps me a lot. So I think that was the two major things that I kind of picked up from her. So yeah, so my life kind of like got significantly better ever since I start, practicing emotional regulation. Then, or like just, allowing my emotions to come up. And shortly, I tried to do shadow work and parts work for myself, and that actually helps as well. Like I can see that I need to use less effort in my everyday life to kind of control my, control probably the wrong word, kind of like have, or rather, yes, have more control about my decisions and my actions, and even basically just the things that I say. but it felt like I kind of like hit a wall at one point. I realized that I couldn't get further, and there are still things that I wish that I could improve about my life. And also at that point, work was getting more and more crazy, and that kind of like contributed to my unhealthy nervous system. So I did a podcast with Tonya, um, probably just one video before this. So if you're interested, I told my whole story about how I got really burnt out from my job and how I transit to what I am doing right now. So I will not share this story again. But basically, at one point, I started seeing a somatic therapist. And oh yeah, I should mention this. Before seeing somatic therapist, before actually engaging a therapist for myself, I actually had the book, The Completion Process, written by Teal Swan, that helped me like a lot as well. But it kind of like hit a bottleneck at one point, which is why I started seeking support from a somatic therapist. I have engaged or have both a counselor slash coach that kind of like guide me just through talking and mainly through CBT. I would say cognitive behavioral therapy that kind of like, you know, changes your thoughts so that in turn it might change your emotions, and realize that that only helped me to a certain extent. Is when I start to engage a somatic therapist, which is more of diving into your emotions and changing and regulating your emotions and the sensations in your body, and that in turn is gonna like change and give you clarity in your mind, so to say, so that you can have, you know, clarity in the mind, deeper understanding of yourself, the situations, and things like that. And that was seriously when a lot of things skyrocketed for me, like the things that I don't like about myself, especially I am able to not be as triggered as before, able to not flare my temper, and even not feel the kind of like anger that I used to feel in the past, so to say. Um, yeah, it was really, really, really different. And I think the most fun part, so to say, is that not just seeing the change in my inner world, but as time goes by, right, I realized that my external reality start to match. And that was pretty nuts. Like, for example, at one point, I seriously couldn't get along with everybody in my life. Like, I felt so lonely. I felt, um, you know, nobody can resonate with how I feel. There is simply no connection. And it comes up to a point where I just didn't know what to do. After, you know, all of the shadow work, emotional regulation, and the sessions with my somatic therapist, um, I had after it the changes goes like this. Like after having better control about myself and able to draw like better boundaries with people, I, of course, in fear, with fear, I kind of like draw a lot of boundary with a lot of people, and of course, these people fade away from my life. But at that point, it was like really scary because I actually don't have that much people in my life anymore, and to do that is like a very scary move. It's almost like, then what else am I gonna be left in my life? But the emotions didn't control me as much as it did in the past, and I was able to do that. And indeed, these people faded away from my life, but little did I know, with time, right, the amount of people that came into my life at that point was nuts. There were so many good friends. I was so happy. I've never felt so happy with the amount of friends I have in my life at one point. And that was the moment everything clicked for me. It was like a I realize I know now is exactly the point. I know how the matrix works, how this whole thing works, how you can actually manifest the reality, the desired reality into your life. But it is not that simple. It is not that simple as like what is written in the book The Secret. It's not as simple as people teaching the teachings out there on how to raise your vibration. And it is not also only just emotional regulation or doing parts work, even though I have to say that's like the key aspects, the most important aspects I came across, and it's not. And it's also not just engaging someone to support you to go through all of this, but all of this together, it just does wonder. I feel like I'm gonna stop here because this is getting like way too long, and I feel like informations are like everywhere. But at one point, I did dive into my astrology, my human design, my 八字, read by different people. But I'm gonna share all of this another time. Just gonna stop here for now. And even by me sharing this story, it feels like pretty crazy for myself. And which is why like I have been sitting on this lived experience, sitting on all this wisdom or all this information, um, not haven't been sharing it, so to say, because I am still working through speaking up and sharing my truth, my authentic self. It hasn't been easy, I have to say. Yeah, but I still don't feel ready, but I just felt like, you know what? I'm never gonna feel as ready. I'm just gonna do it in spite of whatever that's gonna happen. So, thank you for watching. If you have been watching, I am really very grateful. I am even more grateful if you feel like all of this content you resonate. Just drop me a comment, drop me a DM in my Instagram. I would really love to get to know you if this helps you. See you in the next video.